Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar today. Today we're going to be talking about our press team and how we are working for you and your clients. I'm Chad Hill and I'm joined by Adam Stetzer.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chad. Yeah, it's exciting to be here talking about the press team, this exciting new product we've launched this year and is still evolving. I'm in the Rochester office this afternoon, joined by a good portion of HubShout. Say hello, everybody. Hello. So, Chad, I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a good one.
Awesome. Let's jump right in with some breaking news here. I don't know how many people caught this yesterday, but yesterday there was a lot of chatter on the web about an incident that happened on UMoz, and one of the UMoz contributors actually received a warning from Google as part of a manual action against the site, and Google actually specifically said that one of the links that they thought might be, quote here, outside of their quality guidelines was a link from Moz.com. And of course, Rand Fishkin, the CEO there, a very visible person in the SEO space, said that his team takes very close care of reviews everything that's posted to UMoz. It has to go through an editor team where they scrutinize every piece of content, every link, and make sure that they are all editorially appropriate. So this it is kind of confusing, and I think this is the world we are in right now, at least in the world of SEO. And so with that, we wanted to jump in and talk a bit about the press team and how we think that it's the way forward that at least we're taking here. Another example, and something I wanted to talk about here, is just one example of something we recently did, as well as something that we found one of our competitors doing. So on the left-hand side, this was really cool. We were super excited about this, but as part of our one of our press team activities, we wrote a story that covered how Steve Weatherford, the punter for the Giants, had sponsored or helped pay for a prom for a victim of Hurricane Sandy. And so we wrote a story about that, and basically that his PR person, or someone that's responsible for his media relations, saw the story that we had written and picked it up and posted it on his Facebook page. So that's us on the left, and of course the audience value of that's humongous, right? I mean, that you're getting something posted on a NFL player's Facebook page, and on top of that, from the underlying site itself, this went out on a site that had a domain authority of 36, and for those of you who aren't familiar with domain authority, it is Moz's, who publishes a lot of data about websites. It's their metric for the overall authority of a website. So that's what we're doing on the left, and we're taking on the right a look at a competitor that is actively competing against us and what they're doing. And you can see here that the article in this particular case, the content's going up on a website called Content Freelance, and you look at this website, you look at the domain authority, and it's very unlikely that the media person for Steve Weatherford, if we had taken the same article and placed it on Content Freelance, very unlikely that the media person for Steve Weatherford would have picked it up and posted it on his website. So we sort of ask all of you, where do you want to be? Do you want to be on the left, or do you want to be on the right? Do you want to be with what we're doing with HubShout, or do you want to sort of stay in the tactics and the approach that people have been using for the last several years? And again, it was very effective for many years, but things have changed because you're seeing UMoz being listed as potentially suspect links, and so we really do have to think about where are we going to be and where do we want to go.
Yeah, Chad, and I think it dovetails to our webinar a while ago about interpreting the Google guidelines and trying to really do what they're asking you to do when it comes down to, what is your intention when you put something out there? Was this link intended to manipulate a ranking? And, you look at that, Content Freelance, that thing you found from the competitor, and you see a geo-targeted term in the title. I mean, it has all the signals that anyone who's been in SEO for a while recognizes was all the rage 3 years ago, and that was considered okay, and now isn't. And then you look at something on the left, like you talked about, Chad. I mean, I'm really proud of this because there are a lot of writers in the room now and press team members. And I know it takes a lot of creativity to find these stories and comb the news and figure out what readers are going to find interesting. And I think this was a great job of being creative, and then for the press team to go out and get a placement of something that the readers again would want to see with this great audience value, and here proven by the fact that they picked it up and shared it. I mean, this is really cool. This is the vision that we painted, quite a while ago, and I'm excited to see things like this in action with the talent that's in the room with me now, able to pull off. It's great.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think just to set the stage for everybody, what happened on the left here isn't going to happen every time, but that's the nature of media and press PR, is that you set the stage, you take the actions, you find the good stories, and then you have to trust that some of this other promotion will come along with it. And so again, it's a different than what's on the right, where, as you said, Adam, is great. I sort of just read right past that, but you just see, even on the right-hand side, every piece of content on this website, for the most part, several of the ones on the right, have geo-targeted anchor text, and that is just, anytime I've ever seen any of these kinds of warnings where someone's brought something like this to us, and we're looking and trying to help them figure out what to do, it almost inevitably, the things that end up on that list are the tactics that they're specific anchor texts, and that must be how, when Google's filtering through this stuff, they're just getting a screen that's like, here's money keyword anchor text, and these guys all had it, and they're just flagging them, and that's the same thing you're probably going to see with the content on the right. So that's why the path forward here is what we're talking about today with the press team. So we wanted to have everybody meet their press team, and I think that we do have a high-powered team here that we are, really forging new ground. So every day we are learning how to do this better and get the maximum value out of the engagement we're having with your end customers. And I think we've come a long way, and we certainly are going to continue as we have just historically at HubShout, to innovate and evolve and to get everybody, to make this thing work really well. So just I'll give a couple of bullets. They are white labeled, so the press team's white labeled. Certainly better than a questionnaire. That's going to come up. I know people have asked us about questionnaires over and over again. Again, we see questionnaires as sort of the old way of doing things, where someone grabbed the About Us copy on their homepage, stuck it into a press release document, and sent it through and said, hey guys, make up some press release. That's never going to make it onto someone's Facebook page as non-newsworthy press releases. That's kind of old thinking. So that's why these discussions and these interviews are so critical. Our press team is available without an appointment, 9 to 6. I know that's hard for people to sort of get their head around. Like, what do you mean I want to schedule something? We say, sure, schedule it on your end customer's calendar. Tell them to call us at 3:30. Someone will be there. If they don't call to 3:45, someone will be there at 3:45 as well. 5 o'clock, same thing. So we're going to staff this team so that it operates, and it is essentially, it's using a call center, using call center technology, so that those phone calls come in and they're in a queue, and the next available press team member will grab that call. So it makes it a lot easier in many ways, because we don't have to say, well, I'm not available at 3, but I'm available at 3:45. Just pick up the phone and call whenever they're ready to speak to our press team. And then finally, we know we're representing your brand, and we know that's critical. We're actually calling and saying, this is Chad calling from the reseller press team. We know that that's a leap of faith for a lot of you, and we want to let you know that we really respect that. And all the phone calls that we're making are recorded, and I strongly recommend that some of you guys go listen to the phone calls we are making to your clients, because I think they sound really, really great. And the team does meet several times a week to review those phone calls, and again, find ways to explain what we're doing better, or to just make it easier for the end client to be able to get the maximum value out of what we're doing. So our press team has sort of 3 weapons in their arsenal. They have the featured news, the business quote, and the press release. So we've talked about these and introduced these over the last 6 to 8 months, but I want to go through again what each of these 3 things are. So featured news, actually the press team doesn't necessarily call your end client, but the way the featured news works is that these are times where we're taking facts that we're incorporating into your client's website via on-site content, and we're able to reference those facts in news stories that are getting published on community newspapers and other publishing partners that we're actively working on recruiting. And we literally have a team that is making contact on a daily basis with different publications, offering our services to provide high-quality content to their publications that incorporates this information, these facts that then support the content that they're writing. The business quote is in some ways similar to our featured news. We're finding a breaking news story, and then we are using you and your clients as expert resources, because as we all know, when you read a story, sometimes it's nice to see a quote from somebody who's an expert in that area. It gives you extra insight, supports the story, and that's exactly what the business quote is. And then finally, the press release is, again, nothing new. People have been doing press releases for a long time. But what we're doing is, by introducing the interview and really going back to what press releases were kind of originally about, before they were just about SEO press releases, we're actually going and getting news from you. And we have a long checklist because we know that a lot of clients sometimes don't either have time or they just aren't creative enough to think about what's new and different in their business that particular month. But we've got a long list of questions and ways to probe them to come up with ideas on how we can create a compelling press release that then goes out on a good syndication network like PRWeb. I wanted to drill down. We showed this slide a couple of weeks ago in a webinar where we talked about the fact database and what we were going to be doing there, but I wanted to show this again because this is our featured news process, where what we're doing is we're taking news events happening down here in this part of the diagram, and then what we're doing is we're taking on-site content and client facts. We're building a database where we essentially have the breadcrumbs to know that, if 33% of marriages end in divorce, we will have the breadcrumb to know that that particular fact is sourced from a client blog post at this particular URL. So then, as our writers in the sort of the HubShout area here are taking a news event that a publishing partner wants a story on, and they want a supporting fact, they don't have to go spend the time researching. They have the database of facts right in front of them, and those particular facts are then cited from the end client's website. So they're able to take news events, support the news events with facts that help present the angle that they're taking in the story, and then we're able to get those over to the publishing partners, who then review them, make sure they're up to their standards, and publish them. And I will say that we've been working on this now several months now, but we do have stories rejected where a publishing partner says, hey, that's not what the angle I wanted, or you didn't localize enough of the information, or whatever it might be. So we're constantly, there really is there's an editorial process where if we don't hit the standards of that publication, the content doesn't get published.
And Chad, I think at the end of that, it doesn't really describe it here, but the social media sharing and the content discovery networks, the ways we're able to push that out are very attractive to those publishing partners. I was on with the owner of a newspaper yesterday, and they were keenly interested in not only the fact database and how, again, the talented writers we have right in the room here with us today are able to do some excellent work, but then also how we can help them expand their readership. And it sort of serves everybody involved, because the client will then see themselves in print and want to share it, and that serves the newspaper owners because they're trying to get more eyeballs. So it's the age-old win-win on taking what's a fairly traditional PR approach and applying it to digital marketing.
Right, Adam. I saw a response from one of our publishing partners saying, I think we had lost contact inadvertently with them, but they actually were calling back in and emailing us saying, hey, the story you wrote was one of our top trending stories last month. We'd love for you guys to keep writing. So it's really interesting how this is all coming together. And I think a lot of that's because when we published that content, we did come back and support it with content discovery and other things to try to amplify the presence of that article on that website. So yeah, you're right. There's just a radical change in the industry out there, and a lot of these publishing partners we're working with are just hungry to work with guys like us and people like us who are able to help them further their publications. So it makes a lot of sense.
Right, and you've had that editorial control, so you know the quality is very good, and it's also sending all the right SEO signals you want, because that stuff is bad content. It's not going to get pushed that hard. It's not going to get adopted. It's not going to get through a newspaper editor. It's not going to have as many facts and citations, and it won't be shared as much on social media. So yeah, this is really, I think the vision, again, I want to state it over and over again, Chad, I'm really proud of what we've come up with here. It is a little complicated, but when you start to see it in the chart and you start to see the results and you see it coming together with the writers and the press team outreach and the newspapers and then the social media content discovery and syndication bolted onto it, it's a pretty powerful digital view on PR. I think it's really going somewhere.
So let's dig into the business quote process here. And again, part of the objective of this webinar was to, again, just with repetition, make sure everyone is familiar with what we're doing so there isn't confusion, but also as as these programs have been getting implemented, I think we just need to, everyone needs a refresher on the process and what to expect and how to talk to your clients, because I think we see it when we listen to the phone calls. There's still a lot of people that we call when we introduce ourselves as the press team. They have no idea who's calling and why they're calling. So again, we need everyone's help, all of our team as well as all of our reseller partners to be helping us promote what we're doing here and why we're doing it, so that people don't say, I don't have the time this month, I don't feel like it, I don't really understand it, so I'm just going to say no to it, when in fact they're passing on an opportunity that can get, it's the fact that that opportunity to provide a quote for a story that's been written, they don't understand that that's going to get syndicated out, that it can help them with an audience value, that it can help them with rankings. So we have to all do our best to explain that. So let's take the business quote process. So I actually pasted in a task here on the right, just so people could get a general sense of how this comes together. So in this particular case, a task was a part of the campaign, and we identified and flagged that we were going to be running a story on the Nano Express News, and the instruction went out for the writer to start looking at potential topics that would be relevant in breaking news. So in this particular case, for this client, I'm just going to pop over here, and we found a new app that was coming out, and it was to help people better understand their size with online commerce. A lot of people just tend to order the wrong thing, and so this app is supposed to help determine your body shape and size and help you order online more effectively. So I guess there's always an app for that, right? So there's an app for that too. But we wanted to tie that back to a particular client, so our writer put together a good article on that topic, and then the press team here made several calls to the client to review the story and try to get a quote from them. So in this particular case, we made a phone call, and then we actually sent a note over via one of our task updates, which goes out as a private label communication to your client, just letting them know, here are the questions, here's the article we wrote, here's a couple ideas on the kinds of things you might want to talk about. And then basically that went through, and then essentially our press team made a phone call, and I didn't get all the notes in here, but eventually we made contact with the client, reviewed the story, got a quote from them, and then that was published out on the Nano Express News here with a quote for that client. So that's the process. Now I want to talk about a couple things here, because it's, especially with the business quote, it's critical. These are very time-sensitive stories, and again, when we have seen content get rejected from some of the publishing partners, oftentimes it's because we're a day late and a dollar short, meaning that we took too long to get the story to them. So we don't intentionally want to put pressure on anybody to make a decision fast, but we are talking about the news, and if there's a breaking news story, getting that into a publication 3 days after that really isn't going to work. So what we do is we make 3 attempts to contact the end client within 24 hours. If there is no contact, the story has to be published because we've already committed in many cases to the publishing partner to get them that story. So that story has to go out, and if there's no quote, we then route it to the account manager to make sure they get to notify the reseller. Now, the last part is a new tweak we made because we do want that feedback getting to you of cases where the client isn't calling, because oftentimes that's an account management issue. You need to get in touch with the client and say, hey, remember, I've got my press team working to get you good placements so we can help improve your visibility and get you better online results. So if you don't respond or call them back, then this isn't going to work. So we need you guys to be able to get that feedback so that you can then take that back to the customer. Great. And again, I had a, with our confidentiality, unfortunately, I can't play this particular recording. It's a great one, but in your accounts, anyone who has a campaign with a business quote or a press release, those tasks, they typically have recordings right in the notes, and you can go in and listen to them so you can get a sense of what's happening with your clients. I was listening to one today. Again, this is hopefully more the exception than norm, but there was a great one that I used here. There was another one where, unfortunately, I don't think the end client had really been told about this process, and they were sort of confused. So we do our best to explain it, but we need your help in doing that because we're going to miss out on the really good opportunities to incorporate your client into these types of stories out there. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the actual mechanics of how we make the phone call. So, our press team, we said, we'll keep repeating it, no questionnaires. They're too slow. They're not accurate enough. So we do go to the phone, and then we use email correspondence through the task updates that go out to your client. We'll talk about those as well. On the phone side, typically in the first SOW kickoff call that we do, we'll set up a private labeled phone number for you. That private labeled phone number exists on what we call your reseller master account. So if you go to click admin within the dashboard and then you type in the name of your company, you'll be taken to your reseller master account, and you'll see on that first tab a spot here on the right-hand side where you have the white labeled phone number. So what we do is we register a phone number, and then when our team makes an outbound phone call, that's the caller ID. That's also the number that we leave as a callback number. So the caller ID would be your private labeled number, and then when we say please call us back at 847-306-6078, that is the number that, again, we leave in the voicemail if we can't connect with someone immediately. When that person calls back to that 847 number, your private label number, the system will answer, the phone system will answer what it will basically say, thank you for calling the Vet Hubs press team. So it will read your reseller account name and then press team, and it gives them a couple options. There's actually a conference bridge feature because we do have some end clients who join our SOW kickoff call, so that's the way they join the SOW kickoff call. But if they don't choose that option, they are routed to our press team, who then knows how to answer the phone.
Yeah, we've been out at conferences talking about this technology, and what you just described is pretty amazing stuff. The ability to pick and build your own vanity phone number that has a local exchange, that shows as the caller ID when our press team's calling out on your behalf, to have them be able to call back on that number and have that prompt our folks here with technology so they answer the phone in a very customer service friendly way, again, privately branded. And we've been out talking to folks, and we're just pretty sure there's no other reseller program that offers this type of advanced technology for telephonic direct communication to end clients with this white labeling, private labeling. It's pretty advanced.
Yeah, I agree. And then again, there's a lot of trackability here because we're able to see the phone calls that are being made. It's all in the notes of each of these tasks that goes out, and that's also important because, again, we are working with you. We've always talked about full transparency. It gives us an opportunity to review and coach, but it also gives you a chance to see exactly what's happening so you can feel comfortable with it. Okay, so on to the press releases. So we've covered featured news, we've covered the business quotes, and let's talk about press releases now. Again, I've got my no questionnaires Ghostbuster thing going here on the right. So the process is pretty similar. There are a few tweaks because whereas with a business quote, the content is already written and we're just calling to get a quote about that article that we've created or that story that we've created. With the press release, there's a little bit more back and forth, and we know that people are very sensitive to their brand and making sure that we get all the facts right in a press release because there are quite a few facts. There's boilerplates, there's contact numbers, there's people, there's addresses, so there's a lot of details we have to make sure that we get right. So the process on a press release is that, first of all, and I should actually say this in both cases, you have to opt in to using the press team. And we go through that in every SOW kickoff call, but you have to opt in so that you give our team the right to call your clients. So we kind of look at that. We need to do that for two reasons. One, because we know we're calling your client and we need you to give us permission to do that, of course, in this white labeled fashion. But then the second one is that, we want to make sure you guys have the control over that and you're comfortable with the process. Our team can't change that setting. That's only something that you can do on your campaigns. And we typically, in the SOW kickoff calls, ask people to go in and make that change once we explain how it works. So assuming client contact is turned on, what we do is our team makes 3 attempts over 2 days. If there's no response, the task gets routed to the account manager to notify the reseller, and then the client can call back and speak to anyone on the team. So whether, again, it's within those 2 days while we're actively doing the follow-up, or if it's within a reasonable amount of time after we can't make contact. Again, we're there 9 to 6. There's been a lot of people who want to schedule phone calls and different things. What the best way to do it is we are there to take the call when you're ready, so call us, and someone is there to do the press interview and walk you through anything that you need. We then take the transcript of that press release interview is recorded, but from that we actually create some list of bullets that then go to the writer to write the press release. So they write the press release, and then it goes to an editor. Every press release goes through an editing process, and the editor reviews it for not only the content and the grammar of it, but they also we have a few other items that just the formatting of the press release to fit the standards that we have to do as well. So there's a QA checklist that is followed, and assuming everything looks good, it's routed for sign-off. If there is a problem, the editor can choose to make a small tweak or route it back to the writer to get the issues resolved. But ultimately, once it's approved by the editor, it then goes back to the press team, and one of the press team members will, again, contact the end client to have them sign off on the press release. If there are edits made, that then actually has to go back through the editing process because, again, we just want to make sure we get all the details right, and then there's a final sign-off. When things are finally signed off, it is then posted, and hopefully in most cases posted to PRWeb if you've opted into that, because that's really the best. Once you go through all the other investment that goes into getting this press release ready to go out the door, it's crazy if we're not using PRWeb on that campaign. So please opt into that if you haven't already done that. So that's the process that we go through here. And again, if we don't hear back within those 2 days, out of those 3 attempts, we're going to route that back to the AM, who can then notify you and review that on your standard review pending client report so that you see what items are open for your attention. We would see this as being one of them. Okay. A couple things on communication. There was some we've had a few people ask questions. I just want to make sure everyone is aware of both what the system does today as well as a couple little tweaks that we want to make it even better. First of all, every task update notification that goes out as an email. You can see the example above that's going out via an email, and there's a note there that says only text above this line will be included in task. So you can actually reply back to these task updates, and those notes will will be automatically inserted into a task note. So there's been some people who have said, well, my clients have a hard time remembering how to log into your dashboard, or whatever it might be. They're busy, they're on their mobile device. All they need to do is reply back to that task update email notification, and that will go back into the system for our team to review. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that we have several places in the system that, depending on your access, change the behavior of different screens. So for example, someone who does not have access to the tasks module, when they click on one of the links in these task updates to go to the dashboard, if they do have a username and password, they're taken to what we call our task light view. And that is it doesn't have all of the filters and sorting and all the different advanced features that you might use as a power user. It's a very simplified view of just one task with the full notes, and then the ability for someone to add an update, view attachments, view any content associated with it, and click update, and then return that back to someone to review. So those are two features that exist today that recently we realized there's some people who weren't fully up to speed on those. We have identified a couple things we'd like to do to make it even easier for people to communicate with the press team especially. So one thing we want to do is we would like to make it so that with that task light view, you can get to one single task by clicking on a link in the email that does not require someone to log in, because we understand a lot of people have a lot of usernames and passwords. They get confused. It's just sometimes easier to let someone go right to where they want to go than making them log in. So what we're going to do is make it in the near future so that when you click through on one of the links to view the full notes, you'll be able to get directly to that one task without, of course, logging in and being authenticated to other information. You'll be able to see that one particular task. The other thing we want to do is we do want to revise the format of the email a little bit. We've gotten some feedback that we could, that if you look at the subject line, maybe we're taking up too much space with the HubShout task update. Maybe we could move the subject matter to the left and the number to the right. So we're going to do a few tweaks along those lines just to make it a little bit easier to manage in your email inbox and to make ultimately the end customers make the usability of that email update a little easier. And then the other thing we're looking at doing is making it so that there's a better notification that there is content waiting for your approval to review. And again, in this particular view to the bottom, it's not in this particular task, but if there is content to review, it currently shows up as a separate tab that you can click through and look at. Again, we want to make sure that the system's as easy to use as possible, so we're looking at tweaking a few things there. One quick note on the PRWeb add-on. Again, I hit this a minute ago, but just wanted to make sure everyone's aware that this is a $49 upgrade. If you were to go buy the same service from PRWeb, it's $249 a release, so it's a tremendous value. And just in terms of comparing what you get with a PRWeb syndication versus what you get with the free press release sites, I mean, it's really night and day. You're getting, on the right-hand side, this is just one press release we did at one point, but you can see that these are all the different sites that this one press release went out on: LawLink, Court.us, very relevant sites for this particular client. When you use the free versions of the sites, more and more of those sites are just getting inundated with tons and tons of people submitting press releases. So sometimes they take a really long time to go up. Sometimes they say they're going to go up and they never go up. So more and more, we recommend everyone going over to the PRWeb upgrade. It's a way better service. You're going to get way more traction out of it than you would with the free press release options that we have. Okay, so I just want to end this with a couple things here, and really, again, this is very different than what we were doing last year. This has been and it's evolved slowly, but I think if you take a snapshot of especially the most recent plans we rolled out, the SEO news plans, and you compare that to something that we would have been doing 2 years ago, they're very, very different. And I think one of the things that really where we're going with this, as Adam talked about earlier, is that some of the guarantees, they're not there anymore. There's no guarantees that you're always going to get a link. There's certainly no guarantees that the punter of the Giants is going to pick up your featured news story. But we want to work towards putting ourselves in positions where that kind of stuff can happen, because we think that the power of those opportunities way exceeds the guaranteed stuff that our competitors are doing in many cases, where it's just not going to stand the test of time. We got a lot of new metrics, and we're going to be changing some of the vocabulary. I had a great conversation with one of our resellers yesterday, just talking about today what clients see as the tangible output of these types of campaigns. They really only see things like videos and infographics, and they're sort of being told by you in many cases, or by other people, like, oh, don't pay attention to the articles and stuff, because those really aren't for, those are for another purpose. And what we really want to be doing is moving everyone, the way we present these products, the way we report on these products, to showing audience stats and showing how their content is being used. We want, for example, that punter story that was shared on Facebook, that should absolutely get back into the report with some metric. I think today that's a metric I'm not sure we really have. We don't really have the metric that says, and I think actually this isn't just something that HubShout doesn't have, this is something that the entire industry is struggling with, is to really say, what's the difference between a share that is possibly fabricated in some way versus a share by a punter of the Giants who has a huge following. So these are the metrics that we're all going to be working on over probably the next year or so, is to incorporate those into it, so that it's not just, so what people see the value in is not just did my rankings go up or down, but they're actually starting to see, like, I'm getting my brand out. People are, there's an audience out there being exposed to the things I'm doing and talking about, and that I'm getting incorporated into great stories, and we'll have metrics to help support that. So I think that I don't have all I can say is that we're working on those metrics, and those are things that will be coming out over the next year. But this is a big change, and I know that a lot of people have said that, hey, I like the black box approach better, and I just think that, again, as for all the reasons we talked about at the very beginning of this webinar, it's difficult to be there now. You have to evolve past that, because you'd be completely susceptible to the next version of an update, or just, again, missing an opportunity here to really get some true audience value. So Adam, that's all I have. Are there any questions or anything from our own team? Because I know that they've had some questions as well about this whole process.
Yeah, there certainly are. I thought I'd read a few of the chats that have been going back and forth, Chad, as you presented this. One person wrote in and asked, where do we find the recorded phone calls for the press team activity? And I responded to them in the chat window there, and I thought others would want to hear. They're in the specific tasks. You'll see a hyperlink to the call recording. It'll also say, I think above it or below it, who was called and the duration of the phone call, which is helpful if you want to see if one just might be a voicemail. It might see as 20 seconds versus if you see 300, 400, 500 seconds, it was a more substantive conversation. But we invite you to listen to those. I know a lot of resellers have, and it's really helped develop their buy-in in this program, as well as speak more knowledgeably about what the press team is going to do when they're out selling or they're doing onboarding with new clients, so they can set expectations and things go really, really smoothly. Someone else asked, what do you do and how do you to find great topics? Are these easy to come up with for businesses in the idea generation stage? I thought that was an interesting question about just what the press team is doing, and again, what the writer team is doing when they've got their creative hats on and trying to figure out what's going to be appealing to audiences. I said, well, it highly depends on what's in the news. We want stories that audiences want to read and the publishers will want to run, which of course they'll only want to run if they think audiences will want to read them, because that's how they derive their revenue, based on those eyeballs and the revenue. And that tends to be breaking news and hot stories. So that's why we're trending, what's in the news. The writer team is on that, trying to catch what's hot. The press team is on that and trying to incorporate that. It actually is not all that difficult once you have the right creative mindset and you're thinking about digital PR as a creative experience. Someone else, Chad, asked, do we as resellers know the different places that these articles end up? And I said, absolutely. You mentioned this as well, Chad. We're big into transparency, and we show every placement that we earn right there in the dashboard. And furthermore, we really want the resellers to see those, make sure their clients are seeing them, and everybody should be tweeting and sharing them for maximum impact. And we're doing marketing here, so we've got to get the pom-poms out. You know, you get that placement from the NFL Giants, kicker, everybody should be resharing that and getting as much mileage out of that as possible. That's marketing 101. So we work really hard to show you where all these placements are, with the hopes that then you can help propel, prime the pump, and get more social share, more audience, more eyeballs on it, because it makes the marketing that much more effective. And I think that, Chad, is probably the end of the list. I got a few more trickling in, but I'll be able to knock these out before we finish up today.
Excellent. Those are all great questions, and I'm glad everyone. Those are fantastic. I think those are the exact kinds of questions that we're working through as well, and I think we'll continue. There's a lot of exciting tools we're using and starting to prototype. Even I was looking at, we were prototyping one that with the press team that maps out things happening on Twitter. And I even think that we recently had one of our writers actually called and interviewed another resource in one of the markets where we're writing a story. So there's just a lot of really cool ways that, a lot of the question we get or are often asked, especially on the publishing side when we're talking to different publishing partners, is how are you gonna write this from a remote location? And it's really interesting because if you think about it, gosh, so much journalism with Twitter and all these different social media platforms out there, you can actually interview people, and you can find out what's trending in a local market using some different mapping, social media mapping products are out there, and then you can find the people that are actually talking about it, saw that thing happen, and you can actually interview them all from wherever in the world you are. So it really creates a really cool new way of potentially writing stories that are certainly fit in line with all the guys who are hot in the market now. I mean, if you look at BuzzFeed and some of the other Huffington Post, the sites getting all the traffic these days, I mean, they're coming up with very analytical and interesting ways of sourcing their ideas, and then, and in some cases, algorithmically sourcing their ideas, and then getting that content out really, really fast. So a lot of good stuff to come, and we're excited that you guys are all along for this ride with us, and a very important partner because we're listening to everything that you tell us, and we will get this webinar posted no later than tomorrow, and look forward to hearing from you in the forums and in our monthly review calls and SOW kickoff calls. So thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.